So what do you think? Can the Convention of States under Article 5 become a reality? Where are we in this process? What's your sense?
Yeah, Dave, this was a brilliant stroke from George Mason. He was one of the framers of the Constitution, and right at the end of the convention in 1787, on one of the last days, he stood up and said, "Hey, guys, we've got a problem. We have a situation where we've created a federal government that if it gets out of control and steals power from the American people without permission, the only way to get that power back to the people and to the states is if a benevolent federal government would suddenly say, oh, we're real sorry that we did that. We're giving the power back." And he said, of course, that's never happened in human history. Human nature says it won't happen. Therefore, if the federal government gets out of control and does more than the 17 things that the Constitution allows for, which we know they're doing 17,000 things the Constitution does not allow for, he said, if that happens, the states need to be able to overrule the federal government through the amendment process, and that's why they put this into the Constitution. And David, it was unanimous. No objection. It was a mic drop moment at the end of the Constitutional Convention to say, let's make sure the states have the final say on overruling the federal government. And that's what a convention of states is. You're right. We've never done this before. This will be the first time that we've done it. We finally reached that apex moment where the federal government is so out of control, it has to be done. I'm a big believer in this. In fact, I've said for 15 years in my Constitution classes, without a convention of states to put the federal government back into its constitutional boundaries, we will not save the country. This is absolutely necessary to restore limited government and constitutional jurisdictions.
Rick, the federal government has been outside its jurisdiction for a very long time. And so George Mason, bless his heart, and the founders there that unanimously approved it, also made it very, very challenging, very difficult to get this done.
Yes.
Explain to for people that don't understand what goes into this, because this is all about 3/4 of the states, and you need 2/3 ratification. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that goes into this. Why don't you explain it? Because they did make it very difficult.
Yeah, and I'm glad they made it difficult too, right? We want it to be very hard to amend the Constitution. It has to be a super majority in the nation that agrees with the amendments that would go in. So most people absolutely do agree with limiting the terms of federal Congress, limiting the power of the federal government, bringing it back home to the states. So it's big issues like that. But here's the 3-step process. First of all, 34 states have to call for the convention. In other words, their state legislatures have to pass a resolution saying, we want to get together with the other states. We want to have a meeting to talk about the possibility of amending the Constitution and proposing amendments. Now, if that happens, when 34 states call for it, then all 50 states come together and they have maybe a month long. It could be 2 months long. We don't know how long it'll take, but they'll debate and they'll talk about what do we need to do to rein in the federal government. One thing I think most people will now agree on is limiting the terms of Supreme Court justices as well as federal congressmen. So whatever the amendment is or whatever the proposal is, that convention then has to vote for it. So that's step 2. So step 1, 34 states call for the convention. Step 2, at least 26 states at the convention propose and vote yes on a proposed amendment. But then the big one, David, and this is the safety valve that prevents the runaway convention and all these things that people against the convention say would happen. Because step 3, that proposed amendment has to go back to all 50 states, and 38 of them have to say yes. So it's got to be something that you have a tremendous amount of agreement on in the country, which is why we will never pass an amendment through this process for life or ending abortion or any of those types of things. It's going to be structural amendments about who gets the power. And the state legislatures have a self-interest in saying we want the power. And that was the wisdom of the founding fathers here.
Okay, so we live in a very divided states of America now, and we have an ideological divide in this country. Now you're talking about getting 38 of 50 states. Can we get there on things like a balanced budget amendment, on term limits? The suggestion is in the polling, the answer seems to be yes. I mean, it seems like these are two things that I know have been talked about at the Convention of the States as stuff that could get the approval of 38 states.
Yeah, let me give you a great example here. I've been pushing in my Constitution class for 15 years to limit the terms of federal judges. I think it's a travesty that we have judges that serve for 40 or 50 years. And my favorite Supreme Court justice is Clarence Thomas. I mean, I love the guy. He's like my other brain. I mean, he is the best Supreme Court justice of my lifetime. But he's been there 31 years, And what amending the terms would do is, eventually he has to come off the court as well as anyone else. And Democrats have opposed that for the 15 years that I've been proposing it.
Right.
But guess what? Now that we have a Supreme Court that is rendering conservative decisions and constitutional decisions, they're going, hey, we ought to limit the terms of federal judges. So they dropped a bill in Congress last week to set the term of United States Supreme Court justices to 18 years. Now, this is a structural amendment. This is a process type amendment that both sides can agree on and finally say, you know what, we shouldn't have unelected, unaccountable lawyers in Washington, D.C. serving on the Supreme Court, making law for 340 million Americans and being able to do that for 30 or 40 years with no accountability.
Right.
That's a structural amendment that we can get people to agree on. And the ones you mentioned, I think, as well, term limits for Congress, balanced budget amendment. It's all about who has the power, not issues like life and marriage and military and those types of things.
Right.
It'll all be about who gets to decide. And in this case, we're going to bring that decision-making power back to the states on most things and leave the federal government with only those things the Constitution originally gave them power to do. Post office and post roads, military, patents and copyrights. That's the kind of thing they should be doing.
Rick Green, really appreciate it. I wish you had the American flag behind you, but I hear it in your voice. So thank you, sir. I appreciate it. All right.
God bless you, brother. Thanks for having me on.
I just couldn't sit by anymore and do nothing.
I always said I hated politics, but I found out that you can't really change things if you don't get involved.
What we're looking for is somebody that has the heart and wants to help save their country.
It's just the nicest group of people that I've ever worked with.